The crazy ways the Japanese courtesan dealt with pregnancies. I mean, except for the clothes hanger, I don't know what they would have done. Maybe they just threw their babies on the. There's something called the Attestup in Norway. It's like
There are a lot of complications that come with getting pregnant, and as a man, I think I'm uniquely qualified to talk about them. In the Edo
yes.
period in Japan, for ladies of the night in the pleasure districts, getting pregnant was considered a pretty rude thing to do. So
Is it rude? I also really like this little penis symbol. Penis in the bubble tea. I wonder why would it be rude? Maybe it's because they were like out of commission for their favorite men or something. I don't know.
your peers and to your brothel, but they had many different ways to deal with it. Let's start by talking about the more tame practices.
Thank you.
Move
Let's start
to
with the tame
extreme
ones.
that'll make you spit out those ramen noodles. Unfortunately, the more extreme practices were the more common ones. Licensed prostitutes were called yujo. If they got pregnant, their managers yelled at them and even beat them. Getting
You bitchy, you had sex? You had sex on the job? Oh my god, you got pregnant as a prostitute? That should have never happen. It's kind of ridiculous because, I mean, it's not like they had hormonal IUDs or anything, you know?
Getting knocked up was a big deal for yujos because they couldn't work.
Yeah,
Nothing
that makes sense.
deflated a customer's excitement like having the facade of erotic glamour be shattered by a swollen belly. Reality is a fly in the wine glass of lust. And what do you do when a fly lands in your wine? You quickly pick it up and yell, "Spit it out, you thief!" Pregnancies also came with health issues like depression, childbirth, and getting beaten by your manager.
Oof. But one thing is, wasn't there any people who had like some sort of pregnant fetish? If I know anything about Japan, I know that there's tentacles, there's pregnancies, feet, belly, and all sorts of shit over there. We got some, I am a big demon, I will eat you, nom 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 nom. There's a lot of weird fetishes there, so maybe there would have been some pregnancy fetish ladies that could go to some other brothel and work, but yeah.
A yujo could be out of commission for months, costing the
Wow.
brothel that sweet, sweet cash and forcing her peers to pick up the work. This is why all yujos had a PhD in birth control methods and a
Jesus.
master's in swallowing water. Here are some of the methods they used. Certified techniques 7 days a week.
I was gonna do the same. He did it. Certified freak, 7 days a week. Wet wap. I don't want to say this, so disgusting, but make his pull-out game weak. Maybe that's kind of what they need to do. Have a good pull-out game, baby.
The rinse method. After seeing a client, a yujo would scoop and rinse out any lingering customer juice down there.
Makes sense though.
The bamboo paper method, where you would fold a piece of bamboo paper and just
There's like sandpaper up there.
shove it up in there. Simple.
Oh, he did,
Some
yeah,
women
well-
used this strategically to discourage a client she didn't like from coming back, because many men did not like the feeling of their little man being ground down by paper. It wasn't the type of grinding they expected. Other women rewarded clients they did like by not using the bamboo paper method.
I mean, it's not really rewarding if that's what you're paying for. It's more like not rewarding by not doing it rather than rewarding by not having it there. You know what I mean? I mean, rewarding by not having it in is not really the reward. It's just what you pay for. But taking away the bamboo isn't like, oh my god, you've been so good a client. You have to get my whatever vulva.
So if it's slippery down there, it
Unbambooed.
means she likes you, or she's on her period. The moxa method. Moxa is a plant called mugwort. You crush the plant and place a few piles below the belly button and burn them. It's supposed to prevent pregnancy in certain cases for almost a whole year. No, it really works. You see, if you get pregnant, then you're guaranteed not to get pregnant again for almost a whole year. The horn condom method, where the customer would use an animal horn to cover his own horny.
Holy shit. Think about having something shoved up into your bumhole. I'm saying bumhole because there's men and women watching this, and you will understand how it is to have something coming out your bumhole. But think about shoving something hard up there. I'm not talking something pliable, like, you know, a finger that has like a little bit of a give or something. I'm talking about a goddamn, like an oxen horn just like up there. Like that would be like That would be nightmare fuel to me. Like I've been constipated in my life, and that shit's painful. So I wonder what it'd be like if it was a horn.
Horn. I'm guessing they were horns from oxen mostly. This method was not very popular for the client or the yuzhou. There were cases of people using softer material. Surprisingly, their flawless, watertight birth control methods didn't always work. Sometimes a determined Naruto-like tadpole who never gave up would slip through the bamboo. So, how did they deal with this? In many different ways that we'll talk about now. So pull up your panties, do some stretches, and get ready. The natural solution was giving birth. This wasn't the
I mean, that is definitely a natural solution, and you will have a few good months of working, I guess, when the belly isn't big. And if they have any fetishists, then you'll have a few good working when the belly is big. Unless you get beaten, in which case the child won't necessarily come out alive. But yeah.
Norm, but it wasn't uncommon either. Pulling that baby out of the womb was risky. Women did prayers to survive childbirth. Techniques for encouraging an easy birth included spells, holding a seahorse during labor, and drinking medicine from a seashell. They had these establishments that cared for female entertainers until they were well enough to return to work. Yuzhous gave birth there and stayed for a while afterwards. These places also cared for yuzhous who were sick or ones who ended their pregnancy.
Well, that's nice that they had some sort of like a social community that would take care of each other, because I mean, we barely have that today even. And this with the prostitutes being like, I used to be a prostitute a long time ago. I bought this establishment, and now the yuzhou come here and pay a little bit of money, and then we take care of them. I mean, that's kind of nice, though. I'm not going to say, yeah, that's nice.
Of course, most female entertainers did not get to stay at a nice place to relax and recover. It was only for the high-status ladies, the ones whose bodies attracted coin like hot tubs attract Twitch streamers.
Never mind.
Sometimes the mother would choose to keep her baby. Usually only high-class courtesans went this route because they had rich long-term clients who were happy to help support the kid. Anything to keep the mother away from that box of bamboo paper.
What about getting a wife? I mean, there was things in Japan, very interestingly, that you would do with a courtesan or a prostitute that you wouldn't do with your wife because it was degrading. I get that. So, never mind. I get it.
The brothel might choose to care for the child. Girls were trained as child attendants and became future entertainers. Boys were raised to do work for the brothel, like cooking, cleaning, and helping yuzhous escape a rotten life. Some boys even grew up to become male entertainers, like male geisha. However, it was more common for babies to be given up for adoption. Most women couldn't support a child, and brothels usually didn't think it was...
I love this baby with a goddamn already with like a... I have lived 60 years in this womb. My hair is falling off of all the stress. I cannot deal, mommy. Please give me up to better family.
It was worth the hassle. Wait, what about the father, you say? Fathers didn't bother. Were there exceptions where the father returned and took in the baby? Sure, and sometimes
how do you know who the father is?
Swipes right on your profile, but it generally did not happen. Also, the father had no right to the child. Not that there were many clients eager to step up. No, the fate of the baby was something for the brothel to deal with.
Wow,
Fun fact, most pregnancies happened because the yuzhou fooled around with a male co-worker rather than...
What? That is insane. Think about it. You work all day getting laid, and then you decide that fuck these methods. I love my male co-worker. I'm gonna sleep with him, and then you sleep with him, and you get a child with him, and then the whole like establishment's like, what did you do with your male co-worker? I am so upset with you, Yoshinaki. And then Yoshinaki just goes, oh no, oh please let me keep the baby. And then the male co-worker, I will be the dad. And then the owner comes, no, we will give it up for adoption. You two have been bad boys and girls.
And a client. Having said all of that, raising the child or giving it up for adoption happened rarely. What people did way more often was they aborted the pregnancy. Yeah. It was very common. People had different views of what it meant to be a person back then. In the first half of a pregnancy, a fetus was not yet considered human, so ending the pregnancy in the first 4 months or so was no big deal morally. In the second half, people did start calling it a child, so ending a pregnancy in the second half was also no big deal.
I mean, it's not that far away from the ideologies we have today. I don't remember how many weeks it was, but Some say it starts at conception, some say it starts at whatever many weeks. I'm not really getting into that shit. It's boring to me.
Morally. In fact, most of the time, pregnancies were ended in the second half. Now, it wasn't because people were pro choice, they didn't think in those terms. Mothers did not have a choice, actually, as we'll see later. Children were considered not fully of this world, not fully human. Like they had one foot in the spirit world and one foot in
That's
the
kind of cool,
human
though.
world. I talk about this idea in another video here if you want to take a look. So, returning a child back to the spirit world was not morally wrong. For Yujo, it was a regular event. Sometimes she swallowed a drug. If she did it early enough before her belly grew too big, no one would have been the wiser. But if she was far along, things got more complicated.
I guess you'd have to take like body parts out and stuff and then start like, yeah, it's probably not an easy thing, but it's also probably a nice thing that you've had Yusha around that's already gone through that similar process. And then you can kind of like, in a sense, be guided through this by them. And I'm not saying I would want to do it, but I'm not saying I would want to work as a prostitute either. But not everybody has the choice. And luckily, I'm not in the medieval Edo, Sengoku period and a prostitute in Japan.
The woman was laid down, tied up, and gagged to prepare for the pain.
Uh-oh.
Another person
Not the pain.
readied a drug mixture made up of a bunch of plant parts. For example, they would mix in a bowl some betel nut powder, boiled mint leaves, and a dash of mercury. Some other possible ingredients were cherry root, lye, red chili, and skin of pomegranate. Oh, and also mercury. There's also mercury. There's usually mercury. Now, I won't be graphic in case you're eating ramen, but the operation involved using a tool that looked like long chopsticks. See the description if you want to read about it.
A long chopstick. Do we guys want to read the description? That's it. Proceed for ending pregnancies. The woman was gagged and tied, gagged on the floor. They used a long chopstick like a tool and dipped it into a drug mixture, inserted it into the womb, piercing the fetus. This was supposed to induce a miscarriage. Sometimes they didn't use a chopstick, but other things like barley stalks. Obviously, it was a dangerous procedure. Cool. Let me know that.
In more detail, books about these techniques were widely distributed. Remember, they didn't have small cameras or Dr. House. They couldn't see what was happening up in there. It was a dangerous procedure. There was risk of infection, of piercing the woman's insides, and also mercury. Luckily, there was a safer...
His mercury thing. And also, mercury, dog. Come on, there's no good thing as mercury. But also, mercury was used in teeth, if I'm not mistaken, till not very long ago. So, I mean... Mercury's been utilized quite a lot, I guess. In makeup as well. Like, it was a lot of shit being used, both in our bodies here in the West and in the East, apparently. So it's mercury.
Option for the woman. This option was used just as much as ending the pregnancy, if not more. That's right, she could go ahead and give birth, then kill the baby.
Yeah,
giving birth had its own risks, but it was still safer than aborting the pregnancy, though the baby might have disagreed. After a midwife successfully helped deliver a baby, it was customary for her to ask one question. Do you want the baby kept or sent back? Sent back meant sending
it back to the spirit realm, I assume. But that means that they were alive now, because they weren't alive, by their logic, they weren't alive. They were half in the spirit realm before they got out of the womb, which means they are now out of the spirit realm, which to me signifies that they can't be sent back?
The baby back to the spirit world, like the gods had a return policy, where it would wait for another opportunity to re-enter the world elsewhere. Choking or smothering were the usual methods. Now, the mother was allowed to say she wanted to keep it, and it would have made no difference. It was not up to her, it was up to her manager or the owner of the brothel. They probably considered the mother's wishes, but at the end of the day, it was their business decision. Raising a child was expensive. They had to think not only of profits, but of the well-being of all the workers. If the business failed, it would have hurt everyone. Another common decision for brothels was to, one, end...
It actually does make sense. I know it might sound brutal, but it does make sense, because if one person's pregnancy can be the difference between the whole business working, succeeding, or failing, then everybody's on the street. Every single of the prostitutes there, and the owner and the children that's already there, for example.
a Yuzhou's pregnancy so she could go back to work early, big risk to her health. Or two, let her carry the pregnancy to term, then send back the baby. Less risky, but you lose a few months of income. Surprisingly, it seemed that mothers were generally okay with this. Most people did not see it as morally wrong. Sending back the newborn right after birth was common, even for mothers who were not sex workers. People thought a
Oh,
fetus and
interesting.
a newborn were pretty much the same thing, in the same category. Since they were okay with ending a fetus, they were okay with ending a newborn. It was wild.
That's a very interesting mentality. It's almost like the spirits have brought it to you, and now you have to take care of it or send it back to the spirit realm to be, yeah, as I said before, to find another entrance into the human world. So it is. I'm not sure what type of religion that would be considered, but it's very, very, very different, both logically and spiritually, from a lot of the Christianity, which basically tells you that you're a whore if you slept with anybody outside of wedlock. I mean, they were really actually whores, but you get what I mean.
Some people even thought that parents who sold their daughters to a brothel were much worse than parents who killed their daughters at birth, because the
I can see
former
that.
were basically parents who raised kids for money. They sold their children as products. Now, all this didn't
Like
mean that
cattle,
Yuzhals
basically.
didn't care about their kids. If they chose to keep the baby, they loved it just as much as parents today, if they chose to keep it. In the second half of the Edo period, these views started to change. Perhaps because there was a problem at the time with the population not growing, people became more vocal against the constant sending back of babies. Anti baby killing texts appeared, arguing the merits of not killing babies.
Yeah, but if they're working girls that you go to have sex with and then they have 60 babies, how can they keep being a working girl unless you make enough money on that? So people's logic is, well, I guess if they're not prostitutes and they still keep sending them back, as they call it, I mean, that might be a bit different. Yeah.
Some regions banned the practice, but punishments were typically light, like you had to pay some money. Unlike today, the public back then saw killing a baby as a much less serious crime than killing an adult. Adults were more attached to the human world. Now, there is some debate among big brained people about exactly how common aborting and sending back babies was. Recent studies suggest that it may have only been common in northeast Japan and less so
Interesting.
in the rest of the country.
I don't know why that would be. Like, is there any like cultural differences up there that makes it much easier? Were they much more sexually liberated? Did they not care? Were they more in war? Were they more in like areas where life and death happened a lot?
We're not
Very
sure
interesting
who's
to know.
right, so we'll just let them brains battle it out. For
Yeah,
more related topics, check out these videos. I'll see
this guy is super interesting, and I'll definitely watch more. And I'll see you guys later. Bye bye, babies, gentlemen and ladies, sexy babies. Bye bye.